Oh, yeah, that was, and that might not really, I didn't. They had your filter. I think I was being behind.
Yeah.
So this is over. Well, and also just.
Good morning, everybody. Welcome. Thank you for joining us this morning on a chilly February day. My name is Jack Martin. I'm sure most of you know me by now, but I'm the Archivist and Special Collections Librarian here at the Patent Free Library. Thank you for coming to what is the fourth lecture of our 21st year of the Town History series. We are so excited to keep it going, and that is entirely due to all of you who come here and show up, and everyone online. You're on this camera this time. All of you who show up in any way support us, and we deeply appreciate that. And it's so nice to see so many people turning out to learn about Bath, or in this case, West Bath history. I should say area history. A quick reminder, speaking of our cameras, this is being recorded. Also note to our audience here, the microphone is in the ceiling above you. So during the talk, if you just keep your comments and conversation to a minimum, it might pick you up. Just beware that our live stream could hear what you say. So don't say anything you don't want recorded. That recording will be on YouTube early. You can go back and rewatch it. Anyone who couldn't make it or view it this morning is able to see it asynchronously. And for our remote viewers, there will be an email in the description of that upload that you can send your questions into. I'm sorry to our online attendees that you can't participate in the Q&A because of the format, but that's the next best thing that we have. So there will be a way that you can get your questions answered. Just check the description below the video. There'll be an email there and you can send them all in. Our speaker this morning has become almost a fixture of the Town History series himself at this point. I promise I won't make a geology joke. I was going to say feature, but thank you for the polite laughter. He's going to be guiding us through the history of the New Meadows Lake, canal, whatever that body of water actually is this morning. So without further ado, please join me in welcoming Professor Jim Brophy.
Thank you, Jack. And I'm not mic'd right now, so can people in the back hear me? Okay, I'm going into professor mode, so I speak loudly. I moved to West Bath, gosh, a little over 4 years ago, and absolutely loved it. I'm a retired professor of geology, scientist, a board scientist, researcher, and I've pretty much kept myself busy trying to learn everything I can about the history of West Bath, and consequently, I spend a lot of time up in the history room. And it's a wonderful resource. And somewhere along the line, I was leafing through a bunch of stuff that Carrie Nelson, in fact, of West Bath had put together. And I came across these references to New Meadows Lake, largely from this, well, actually goes back to the 30s. And I became intrigued. So I did a bit more research and it eventually turned into a pretty interesting and compelling story. I was not here at the time that all the sort of important events that we'll be talking about today took place. So hopefully some of you were, and I'd be very interested in getting your perspectives on what happened and what was going on. The basis for this presentation, because I wasn't here at that time, is entirely based on newspaper clippings taken from the old local newspapers, which are now digitally available, so it wasn't that much of a chore. And so if it didn't happen, if it wasn't recorded in the newspapers, as far as I'm concerned, it didn't happen. And accordingly, it did not make it into what we'll be talking about today. But the title of the talk is Stink or Swim, A History of the New Meadows Lake. Obviously, employ on sink or swim. You'll know shortly why the stink. Today, I think we'd all agree that the New Meadows Lake, this is a view looking south from the Old Bath Road boat landing, looking down across the northern part of the lake. I think we'd all agree that it's a great asset to both the towns of West Bath and New Brunswick. What you see today is a smooth, sort of idyllic, placid lake. On any given day, you might, in fact, you will unless it's 20 below zero, you will see boats with clammers in them going around their clamming business. I can't believe some of these guys and the weather in which they do their clamming. These are hardy folks. But what you don't see is people swimming in the lake. You don't see sailboats sailing around. You don't see motorboats motoring around. You don't see water skiers. And perhaps most importantly, what you don't see is all sorts of rental cottages and homes lining the shores, both shores of the lake. And yet this is precisely what was envisioned when New Meadows Lake was first conceived back in the 1930s and ultimately implemented. What happened? Well, that's what this talk is all about. I'm going to try and go through some of the more important aspects of the history of New Meadows Lake. And so let's get started. All right, our story starts in the early 20th century with the existing Bath or Brunswick to Bath Road. This was a dirt road. Much of it was, in fact, originally constructed in the 1700s. Narrow, windy, hilly, particularly in the West Bath area. And it was built for horses and wagons. And by the early 20th century, it was becoming obsolete. No doubt about it. The road crossed the New Meadows River, which had always been a major obstacle to east-west travel, just as with the Kennebec River. It crossed the New Meadows on something, what was known as the Bull Rock Bridge. This is a picture of the Bull Rock Bridge taken, I think, in the earliest 1900s, perhaps. It's looking south along the New Meadows River. The Grand View Hotel is in the background. It's no longer there, burned to the ground. And the bridge itself was built in the mid-1800s. It's all wood construction. It had been repaired multiple times, and it was simply getting a bit long in the tooth. Incidentally, the location of the bridge, the abutments, were where on the Brunswick side, the Sawyer Park boat landing is, and on the West Bath side, where Bull Rock Road basically disappears into the lake. Those were the abutments of where the old Bull Rock Bridge was. As with the road, the bridge itself was built for horses and wagons. This is an actual picture taken on the bridge, not for automobiles and heavy trucks, which were becoming the norm as we moved into the 20th century. So by the 1930s, it was pretty clear that both the road and the bridge needed a major overhaul or perhaps complete replacement. By 1933, the locals decided, hey, we want a new road. Simple as that. So they start signing petitions that would make their way to Augusta. They asked the highway board, the state highway board, to build a new road. The towns of Brunswick and Bath agreed in principle on a new road, provided that the state paid for it, of course. And so this was the beginning. The idea was to build a modern, paved road which went as straight as possible from around Cook's Corner to the center of Bath. In fact, it became known as the Straight Line Road when people were pushing for it. But there's a sticking point, of course, and that's how to get across the New Meadows River, which has always been this barrier to east-west travel between the two towns. Using the old Bull Rock Bridge was simply not an option. It was too obsolescent, couldn't begin to carry the sort of traffic envisioned for this new road. So this was going to require some sort of new construction. And the question was, what would that construction be? Or what would that new construction be? The two options that were being bandied about at the time were a bridge, which needs no explanation, or a dirt causeway, which is essentially a solid earth dam with spillway. In the case of a bridge, the bridge would simply cross over the New Meadows River, wouldn't affect the river one iota, would do its thing. In contrast, a dirt causeway across the top of which the road would run and the small spillway had the potential, not the potential necessarily, heavily impacted the New Meadows River. According to the engineers, a bridge would be much more expensive than a causeway, which makes sense. And as money is always an issue with these things, this was pretty much an important conclusion. There are benefits to a causeway. The dam would create a smooth, placid, non-tidal lake upstream, which could give rise to all sorts of recreational opportunities, which they didn't have at the time. And for that reason, it gained significant grassroots support. So what sort of recreational opportunities were envisioned at this time? This is in the early 30s. Well, swimming and swimming clubs. I love the bathing suits here. Sailing and sailing clubs. This is actually a picture of the Bowdoin College Sailing Club on the lake, incidentally. Speedboating, water skiing, family camping along the shores in established campgrounds, ice fishing during the winter. The list went on and on and on. Some heavy hitters got involved in the discussion. One, Joseph Larrabee, who was a very prominent West Bath citizen, landowner, and apparently famous for his clam bakes, I'm told, back in the 30s and 40s. Well, he owned several rental cottages on the East Bank. He had built them in the 1920s on his own land. And they were in a little enclave called Larrabee's Grove. Here's a picture of one of those cottages. This particular one is named Oakleaf. They were built in the 1920s, but this photo was taken around 1940. In any event, his rental business stood to really, really prosper if the lake were to be built. So he was a very strong proponent of the causeway. Just as an aside, this Oakleaf cottage, still there. I drove into Larrabee's Grove the other day and went, whoa, there it is. There's even a sign that says Oakleaf on it. So go check it out someday. This is a Google view, so I was not stalking people in front of their houses. In addition, there was a prominent but unnamed Bath businessman. And I'm going to have to read this because it's delightful. The Bath Daily Times reported that a well-known Bath man with legislative experience, that's important, says it has long been his dream that instead of building a bridge over the New Meadows between West Bath and Brunswick, that a causeway with spillway be substituted. This would dam the river north of the bridge and, in his belief, furnish an excellent landing place for seaplanes. This guy was envisioning, probably from a business standpoint, a water-based aerodrome on the New Meadows Lake. However, there are some drawbacks to a causeway. Specifically, the narrow spillway could reduce tidal flushing of the upstream lake. The upstream lakes and the waters could stagnate, and this could lead to all sorts of potential unforeseen consequences. Some more prescient people voiced their concerns about this, but they were sort of lost in the wilderness. So after 3 years of silence and undoubtedly a great deal of backdoor politicking, the State Highway Commission makes their decision. They decide for a causeway or dam and a fixed type of bridge of a single span, i.e. a narrow spillway. There was absolutely no public discussion allowed. It is what it is. This was by fiat. And this is when the New Meadows Lake was born, once this decision was made. So in 1936, construction of the new road begins. And in fall of 1937, construction on the causeway began. These are two aerial photographs taken from airplanes at the time, pretty much showing what's going on. This one on the left is looking west towards Brunswick, and one can see the causeway under construction. And one can see the new road, the straight line road going off towards Brunswick. And this new road is what we know today as Bath Road. This is a view looking east towards West Bath. The New Meadows and the causeway would be somewhere down here. But what one can see is the new road going across West Bath. That's what we know today as State Road. And the old road, which was called Bull Rock Road and still in use, was shown here. Well, it's almost as if the fates were speaking, but problems with the causeway arose immediately. Imagine that you're a construction worker and you have spent a long day laying down a section of the dirt causeway. Quitting time, go home, enjoy time with your family. Next morning, come back to work, ready, or maybe not ready, to go back to work and rebuild, pick up where you left off. And you come to the work site and everything that you did yesterday is gone. Where is it? It sank into the water. And this happened multiple times. The culprit turned out to be a hidden layer of clay in the seabed, really, that no one knew about. And it must have been pretty thick, that simply could not bear the weight of all the added material going on. And it flowed and the material just sank down. This led to very long delays that put the project seriously behind schedule and, quite frankly, well over budget. But eventually, the job got done. Hello. There we go. The centerpiece of the causeway was, whoops, the spillway. They were very proud of it. This is a view of the nearly completed spillway looking north into New Meadows Lake. As written in the Bath Daily Times, it was described as a beautiful concrete affair. They're waxing back with wide, flaring abutments to keep the tide from wearing at the edges of the fill. Wow. Okay. Very proud of it. The design of the spillway was as follows. The spillway was 15 feet across. That's not very wide, is it? Think about it. Okay, that's probably from me to the next set of chairs over there. The bottom was about 2 feet below mean high tide on the New Meadows River. So this reduced what is normally about a 9-foot tide on the New Meadows River to a 2-foot tide on New Meadows Lake. In addition, the design called for the addition of removable vertical wooden planks, which were called tidal planks, which effectively raised the bottom of the spillway by 2 feet or more. And this eliminated all tidal action. So the New Meadows Lake,
Can you clarify which way we're looking, north, south?
yeah, I'm sorry. This would be, I keep switching around. This would be looking south, okay? We're in the lake, looking south, flow would be in this direction. So it's on the upstream side of the spillway.
So in the photograph, is it?
The photograph would be here, looking this way. And I think, I'm not sure, but I think you can actually see the tidal planks in position right there. I think, I'm not sure. So the net result was creating a truly tide-free lake. Okay, the causeway's done. The 40s and during the 40s and 50s, life on the lake is good. Sailing and boating reigns supreme. Multiple public and private swimming camps are established. Boat and Sailing Club sets up shop. The rental business is booming. Larrabee and his Grove is probably maxing out on rentals. The New Meadows River cabins are constructed in 1940 to take advantage of, the business boom in the area. Ice fishing takes off. Eventually, ice racing with automobiles becomes popular. Who here has been to the ice races? I've only been here 4 years and the New Meadows River hardly ever freezes over since I've been here. So that must have been something. Whatever happened to the water-based seaplane port? No idea. Okay, I never heard anything about it again, which is probably a good thing. So there were a few hiccups along the way. One of my favorite occurred in 1956 when approximately 600 bushels of alewives somehow, maybe through a storm tide or whatever, got over the tidal planks into the lake and got trapped. And everyone knew they were just going to die and start rotting and stinking. So it was a real issue. So they hired a local fisherman to remove the fish. Okay, he had the wherewithal. But this required a conservation ruling from the Commissioner of the Sea and Shore Fisheries. The fisherman couldn't touch the fish until he got the okay from the state. And this takes time. So people are getting frustrated. And someday in the middle of the night, someone or a group of someones goes down to the spillway and removes the tidal planks. The lake flushes out, taking with it most of, but not all, of the alewives. Well, when people realized what had happened, they put the tidal boards back in, lake filled up. And the question was, how many are left? I love this answer. The fisherman who was contracted with to remove all the fish sort of quipped, well, in a few hot days, that should give us the answer to that question. A lot of rotting fish floating on the surface. Whoops. Hold on.
Just
Okay.
slow.
It's an old computer. In the earliest 1960s, the first hint of trouble started to arise. People started noticing such as here along the Brunswick shore of the New Meadows Lake, growth of aquatic weeds and algae starting to show up on the shore. And when this stuff died and started to decay, apparently it gave off this rotten egg smell that was just overpowering. This was not very conducive to the leisure that everyone was hoping to have on the New Meadows Lake at the time. By 1963, all summertime use of the lake had ceased. Swimming, sailing, boating, water skiing, cottage rentals, and associated businesses. An entire industry disappeared because of the stench. And this was a disaster for West Bath and Brunswick, from a public relations standpoint as well as a business standpoint. Why was this occurring, or why did it occur? Well, the scientists pretty much knew that the weeds and algae that were growing were known to reflect high nutrient concentrations and low oxygen conditions in the waters. And so the most likely suspects for these were direct dumping of household waste into the lake. Here's a picture from the mid-60s of a lakeside cottage and the sewer pipe draining directly into the lake. This was common practice back then. Mm-hmm. Direct dumping of boat waste. I'm not a boater, but I'm told that this was pretty common at the time. Nowadays, I believe you have to be a certain distance offshore or in the open ocean before you can dump something like that. Farm runoff, an inevitable problem. And this was probably largely nitrates coming from the fertilizer on the farm fields. Altogether, they were just creating a soup in the New Meadows Lake. Come on, what is going on? I'm about to drop kick my computer. I'm for new. But why now? I mean, it's been like 20 years. Well, this is my take on it, but presumably I think this was due to a very slow accumulation of nutrients and a lot of loss of oxygen in the water. It was just slowly building up. In 1960s, the lake reached a tipping point and the weeds and algae started flourishing. In 1963, a local representative suggested for the very first time that the problem may be due to an inadequate opening for draining and refilling the lake. Yeah. So the question is, have those 1936 chickens come home to roost? And it looks like they may well have. My computer does not like your system. Okay, boy. And another cause for concern at the time was the new Route 1, which was being constructed at the time. Construction was steadily marching eastward. This is a 1963 view looking east at the crest of the hill, just as you would come down into the valley where the New Meadows Lake currently resides. Okay. The plan was that the new highway, which was 2 lanes, would cross the New Meadows River via, you guessed it, a dirt causeway with a narrow spillway. Same thing that they put in, which people are starting to believe is causing all of the troubles now. It's time to act. So an alarmed West Bath and maybe Brunswick, I'm not sure if they were involved in this or not, submits a bill to the state legislature to clean up the New Meadows. The talking points of the bill were, the present stench has reached a point where recreation in any new development of the New Meadows Lake is not being done. A bridge span would be absolutely essential rather than a culvert, reed spillway, on the proposed highway crossing. They're talking about the new Route 1 here. And in the future, the spillway on old Route 1, the state highway, should be changed to allow a greater flow of tidal water into the lake. They also asked for $2,000, which is a lot of money back then, to chemically treat the waters that were in the lake. The bill goes to the state legislature. The $2,000 request is immediately denied. The remainder of the bill generated a lot of discussion. And from West Bath comes, don't compound the mistake of a quarter century ago. A culvert would carry a $5 million highway over an open septic tank. There will be a loss of recreational use of the water and depression of property values. This has already happened. And from the chair of the State Highway Commission, hey guys, bridge is expensive. Be an extra $150,000. And quite frankly, we're not really concerned about the welfare of the West Bath constituents.
They said that.
Apparently the chair of the State Highway Commission, I don't know who it was, okay? But it's was recorded in an article from the Bath Daily Times in 1963. Not sure who it is, but how to make friends. But there was a short-lived victory. The State Highway Commission reversed course and agrees to build a bridge. This article says it's lake to have two bridges, but that's simply because there are two lanes. Okay, basically a single, narrow, I believe it was like 24 feet across. Next time you drive over, take a look. It's pretty narrow. But then they change their mind and go back to the original plan for a spillway. No, who knows why? Again, a lot of backdoor politicking probably. And in 1963, the construction contract is awarded to our local Reed and Reed, and away they went. So in 1964, against nearly complete opposition, the causeway is constructed. This is a view looking east towards West Bath, and one can just get a feeling for the magnitude of the project, just immense. You can see the two spillways under construction right there. Shortly thereafter, an op-ed was published in the Brunswick Record entitled "A Classic Mistake." The first paragraph reads, "It seems to us a classic mistake has been made at New Meadows Lake. So classic it bears examination in the hope that some lessons may be learned which can help save Maine, can help save Brunswick, and presumably in the future, Maine." Did it make a difference? No, but it made them feel good, I'm sure. Because the stench continues. 1965, New Meadows Lake stench gets worse. 1966, new stink. 1971, we're now talking 10 years from when this problem first arose. Rotten egg odor stifling the New Meadows Lake area. In 1966, people are getting really frustrated, and some locals have had enough. By this time, the general assumption at the time was that the weed and algae growth are due to lack of circulation in the lake. What's the obvious solution here? Remove the tidal planks, remember them, and permit daily tidal flushing. Makes sense. It's illegal, but makes sense. So for over a year, nighttime bandits repeatedly removed the planks, flushing out the lake, and the State Highway Commission would repeatedly replace them. This happened over and over and over, and it was just a comedy in the making. I mean, I wish I had been there to see it all happen. This one was alarming. There was serious discussion about reopening the Peterson Canal to flush out the New Meadows Lake. Now I'm seeing people going, huh? Huh? Okay, for those of you that don't know, the Peterson Canal was built in the late 1700s. And it was an attempt to connect Mary Meeting Bay, which is down here, through the constructed canal with the New Meadows River. The idea was twofold. It was one, to bypass the chops in the Kennebec, which were very, very dangerous for navigation. And two, it would open up the New Meadows River, which is quite distinct from the Kennebec River. And it would open up that whole area to commerce, logging, boating, shipping, the whole 9 yards. It was a dismal failure on all fronts, largely because they couldn't get the tides to agree. It was just a total failure. And so I'm often reminded of the saying, those who forget the past, et cetera, et cetera. Can the state help out? The state says, no, it's not our problem, it's yours. The town submit another bill to the state legislature. After initial optimism, where it sort of makes it through the first round, slam. Bill's denied. Local citizens petition the highway department to clean up the river. The commissioner of the commissioner of the state highway department, sounds like this is the same guy. He's kind of a grumpy guy. We are aware and sympathetic about the problem, but we're not going to do anything about it. Again, wow. Okay, due to the lack of support, the towns decide, okay, we're going to have to go it alone. So the town councils of both Brunswick and Bath tentatively accept a $6,000 engineering study. They put out bids, contracts, they put out a contract. Bids came back, and probably the lowest was $6,000. And a key component of this was going to be a hydrologic study of water exchange in the lake. Brunswick was going to pay the lion's share of the bill, $5,600, and West Bath was going to pay $400. Sound fair? But not so fast. West Bath citizens want to have their say. Doesn't matter if the town council. This sound familiar? I don't know. In a West Bath town hall meeting, turned out there was a lot of resistance, unexpected resistance, I suspect. Hey, it's not our problem. As the prevailing winds blow the smell of decaying algae, it's Brunswick. Really neighborly. The proposal is turned down. And Brunswick, probably rather unhappily, goes and gets some outside funding. I believe it was from the Ford Foundation, which covered a fair amount of the $6,000, not all of it. And they paid for the study itself. When the study is complete, oops, that's the first typo I found in here. When the study is complete, recommendations were remove the tidal planks. This will give daily tidal flushing and it should help clean up the water. Enlarge the old Route 1 spillway. Facilitate more tidal flushing. Mechanically harvest the weeds. This would have to be done. This is not a one-time affair. I mean, this would have to be done yearly. And finally, do not open or reopen the Peterson Canal. That's a Pandora's box if you open up that one. But with the exception of the tidal planks and the Peterson Canal, none of these recommendations were ever acted upon. The reason probably is they can't afford it. The state's not going to provide any help, and the towns simply couldn't afford it. That's my take. So, in 1974, the record goes absolutely silent. There are no more newspaper articles on the New Meadows Lake or the stench. And believe me, I searched. Did the problem disappear on its own? I don't think so. I think what happened was that people just were exhausted. They were frustrated. They threw up their hands. They've tried everything to no avail, and they certainly can't afford to do it on their own. And I started off this talk by saying, with no newspaper articles, there's no longer a story. I don't know what happened after 70. Which brings us to today. As any one of us drives across the State Road Causeway or the Route 1 Causeway, these are taken from Google Earth, note the size of the spillway relative to the body of water and the size of the spillway relative to the body of water. Tiny. But in any event, as you drive across either one of these causeways today, you don't find yourself rolling up, bringing the window up because of this stinking, odoriferous smell out there. Why? Because it's not there. This means that somewhere along the line between 1974 and the present, despite absolutely no remedial action being taken on anybody's part, the lake cleaned itself up. How or why? I believe that this is just a wonderful example of the resilience of nature. Nearly all the old cottages that were hot dumping waste into the lake, they're gone, okay? They were either abandoned and then torn down, or torn down and new housing replaced them. And any new housing requires that they be hooked up into a sewer or a septic system. So this source of pollution, nutrients, many of which were very, very reducing and therefore reduced the oxygen content, was no longer there. Overboard dumping of waste from boats has been banned for some time now. And finally, much of the nearby farmland, which was almost entirely on the West Bath side, has been converted to industrial or residential use, thus reducing the amount of farm runoff into the lake, reducing the nitrates going into the lake, and so on. But I think there's something even more important, and that's us. I really do believe that today all of us are much more aware of what constitutes what I will call environmental best practices, so that through our own actions in the past decades and inactions as well, we have permitted the lake to almost return to its original state, if not its original intended use, i.e. recreation. So there's an epilogue to all this. In 1999, the New Meadows River Watershed Project is founded. It's a collaboration between the municipalities of Bath, Brunswick, Harpswell, Phillipsburg, and West Bath. The mission is to improve and maintain the vitality of the ecological and economic resources of the New Meadows River and its watershed. And the New Meadows Lake is an important component of this project. For example, in 2004, a feasibility study for restoring tidal exchange in the New Meadows River was given a high priority by the project. And this led 2 years later to a thorough and modern, rigorous engineering study. And the overall recommendations of the study were, not surprisingly, widen and deepen the spillway where State Road goes across, the original 1937 spillway. Or better yet, remove the causeway altogether, which would mean building a bridge, of course. And unfortunately, once again, to date, none of these recommendations have been acted upon. Again, it's money. These things are really, really expensive. So what's happening today with the New Meadows River? Not much. It's stable. It's constantly being monitored by an alphabet soup of different groups with different monikers and so on. But it's being monitored for anything and everything, particularly water quality. But the lake today, and I really don't know when this started, has become a major site for clamming. Several years ago, I happened to run into a fellow named Chris Stapleton, who was a local shellfish distributor, and we were chatting. And I didn't know much at all about the area at that time. And we got chatting about what he called the pond. And he basically said, if it weren't for the pond, I'd be out of business, which made me realize just how important the New Meadows Lake is as a resource for the local West Bath and Brunswick clammers. So the focus may no longer be recreation, but the lake is doing fine and is a boon to the local economies of both West Bath and Brunswick. So in conclusion, clearly the New Meadows Lake has had a long history of ups and downs. Its original plan as a recreational mecca was unable to survive the onslaught of nasty smelling weeds and a seeming lack of concern on the part of the state. An entire recreational industry grew up and collapsed, never to return. At least it hasn't returned yet. So at present, the primary use is economical, clamming, which I'm sure suits many people just fine. As we move forward, perhaps the lake will once again become the focus of recreational use as it was originally intended. Who knows? I don't have the answers. But I think people are pretty content with what the lake is today. So that's the end of my presentation. There are acknowledgements, of course. I want to acknowledge the Patent Free Library for supporting this the Town History series of talks. It's a wonderful, wonderful thing. I come to as many of them as I can. 2 weeks ago for the Arousing talk, I signed myself up. promptly showed up at 11:30 to attend the talk. And so I'm one of those people that made an empty seat in that time. So Jack Martin. Jack has been great. He's helped me in the history room, but more importantly, he's helped facilitate just the mechanics, the techie part of all this. And then finally, Carrie Nelson. Carrie is just a gem. She has spent hundreds of hours collecting, organizing, collating innumerable pieces of West Bath history, all of which can now be found in several large binders in the patent-free library history room. And I also thank her for always being there when I have questions about West Bath history. I can drop her an email. It may take a couple of days for the response to come back. She's busy, but the response always does come back. And it almost always answers my question or leads to more questions. So with that, I'm going to sign off and thank you for listening and open the floor to questions if people have them. Yeah.
I don't know much about this history other than I'm listening from you, other than seeing it from Route 1 and looking over my shoulder as I'm driving through it. But the thing that strikes me is a couple of parallel things that probably have nothing to do with anything. Is that during the 70s is when we cleaned up the Kennebec with the Edmund Muskie's bill for Clean Air and Water Act. I'm wondering if there's any parallel going on either in the recognition of the environmental protection of our waterway or that the actual bill did something about that area of not dumping anything into the lake compared to what they eliminated being dumped into the Kennebec.
Yeah, so I, of course, wasn't here. Did West Bath secure state funds to work on the
I don't
Kennebec?
know,
I don't know.
It just strikes me there's a parallel from a historical
Yeah.
dating point of view. That's when the Kennebec was cleaned up. We cleaned up all the.
Well, all I can say is Bath is Bath and West Bath is West Bath, unfortunately.
Well, from that, Kennebec River, because of that cleanup, has had a huge resurgence in environmental issues associated with new fish coming into the river and building, a lot of houses have been built in the 70s because of that bill.
Yeah, exactly.
Before, the Kennebec was as stinky as New Meadows apparently was.
Well, the same thing could happen to the New Meadows today. All you gotta do is get rid of that causeway, the State Road Causeway that was built in 1937, replace it with a bridge. And the remaining problems there are will be taken care of because it will suddenly once again become a true tidal estuary with 9 feet of tidal rise and fall. It's going to flush itself out. But as long as that causeway stays there, it'll never happen.
Personally, I've still noticed the smell from the lake in summertime.
It's there.
Yeah.
So it's there, not in the wintertime, but in the summertime, it's.
I've smelled it too. It doesn't cause me to roll up my windows. My nose does wrinkle a little bit. So yeah, it's still there. This is State Road Causeway, but I drive across it. So admittedly, get rid of the causeway. Yeah, was there one over here?
Do you have any information on how the depth of the water has changed? It seems to me there's been a lot of sedimentation and you don't have the depth of water today you had 60 or 80 years ago in there.
In the New Meadows.
Yeah, it's filled in
Yeah, oh,
from the
for
upper
sure,
end.
because you've got the river coming in from the north that is bringing sediment. So yeah, it's slowly filling up.
With mud.
Yeah,
So it's not good for swimming or sailing.
that may well be. Yeah.
And there's a reason people aren't swimming. If it isn't water quality, there's another reason.
Yeah.
Or sailing in there with a keel or a centerboard.
Okay, yeah. But what would happen if the causeway were removed?
Well, they'd have to dredge.
Yeah, okay,
And
sure.
that's expensive.
There's a lot more to the problem, sure. As a geologist, we all know that one of the most ephemeral geologic features is a lake. Because inevitably, they fill up geologically, just like that. So, yeah, I'm not at all surprised that that's happening.
In a sense, it's not the same lake anymore,
Okay, yeah, well, that's,
geologically or physically.
You mentioned that they removed the tidal planks, so didn't that increase the tidal action?
that's, I believe that they removed the tidal planks. Does anyone live on the New Meadows Lake?
Those are long gone.
Is there a tide?
Boats go back and forth all the time through it, the clamming boats.
Yeah. Is there a tide in the New Meadows?
Not much, but yes.
How much? Like,
Nowhere.
not that much, so.
Some.
Must help a little bit.
Okay. Smaller amount.
So maybe they replaced it with tidal planks that weren't as tall. I don't know. But I think originally, the original spillway design called for about 2 feet tidal. Yeah, and then,
Yeah, after seeing your presentation, I'm not sure I'd eat any clams that would.
yeah, I'm
And I know they're not clams, but
Cohogs.
they're quahogs.
Not
Right?
Quahog's not a clam?
yeah.
It's a hard shell.
Technically,
It's not a soft shell.
Soft shell clam.
No, it's not a soft shell clam, but it's still a
It's a
clam.
clam. yeah.
So story, the back and forth nature of the story falls back to the initial construction of the closure there at State Road.
That's when it all started.
That's when it started.
And depending upon who you talk to, the Route 1 causeway and spillway made things worse, or it didn't change a thing. The real culprit, which created the lake in the first place, was the causeway. And at the time, I mean, there was a lot of people were in favor of it. There are some more recent articles, which maybe it's revisionist history, but they talk about how West Bath actually put in writing some sort of agreement that would promote the building of the causeway, and that one of the reasons that the state came back and said it's your problem was because here it was in black and white, West Bath taking responsibility for it, but there was never any mention of that at the time. So that could be revisionist history.
Now, at the north end of the lake, do we have a similar situation there?
At the very, very north end, yeah, that's another causeway. Where Old Bath Road goes across, yeah. In fact, there was talk, and in fact, one of these studies, one of the recommendations, I didn't get into that, was that should be turned into a bridge, or the causeway should be widened. But some state agency associated with birds said, no, you can't do that. Because the water that's impounded upstream, there's all sorts of good feed and fodder for the aquatic water birds. And if you got rid of that, then that would go. So, there's so. Anything else? Yes.
Did the Pogies ever get into New Meadows Lake? Does anyone remember I know they were in the New Meadows down, but were they ever in the northern part of the lake?
There was, we talked earlier, in fact, about the Pogies. First off, I had never heard of the Pogie.
Same thing.
Which, that's my ignorance for not having been here, only for about 4.5 years.
I can't remember.
Never did I come across the word Pogie in any of the newspaper articles that I looked at. So it does not appear that it would have been an issue in the lake. That's all I can say. I mean, there was no mention of Pogies.
Does anyone know of the success of the quahogs? And I think a marine biologist from Brunswick used to go around, I had heard, used to go around and put like seeds somewhere. And he what I've heard is that he, pretty well seeded New Meadows Lake. So there've been huge numbers of quahogs coming out of there. I don't know when all that started. I just don't remember.
That'd be great. Well, presumably that would have been after the lake had sort of.
I
cleaned
mean,
itself
it's
up.
been at least 10 years, I'd say, and
Yeah.
they're still taking bushels and bushels of quahogs out of the
Because they
lake.
didn't fish them for a really long time. They were in there. Well, ask Allison, she knows. You went up.
One of the departments, again, I can't recall which one, they have an annual quahog survey. And they all get together in Brunswick and, scientists get together and they talk about the health and vitality of the quahog population in the New Meadows River as a whole, but presumably that includes New Meadows Lake. So I don't know, if you look out on the lake, there are all people quahogging, I guess. And so it looks to me like it's thriving. Yes,
I would think to kind of answer your question, Chris Stapleton, who you talked with, he would probably know a lot more about the history
I
of
just
that.
don't remember when the quahogging started.
Yeah.
But there must be at least 10 to 20 diggers
Yeah.
there. I mean, both sides of the road will be lined with
Yeah.
trucks and trailers and, but they're kind of on, they can't fish during the winter because it's frozen.
My memory is, and I haven't talked with Chris in a while, but my memory is that a lot of those went, he's a dealer, went to Massachusetts. That I don't know that there's a local, other than people just fishing locally, but
I think everybody has to be licensed to
yes.
dig there.
Yeah, it's a pretty cool resource.
Yeah. Huge amount of money's coming out of there.
yes.
When they raised the level of the lake, did they have to do any lumbering? Did you ever read anything about that?
Say again?
When they raised the levels to make the lake, did they have to cut trees, along the shores? No?
Well, no, because the lake wasn't necessarily raised. It was held at its high tide level.
Okay.
So, it's as if the tide came in and they cut it off. Well, thank you.
Thank you.